Today, on Be Something Wonderful, transcend all temporary 3D conditions and manifest it anyway. I am your host, Tom Kearin, and this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of higher consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Creators, welcome back. We are back from Vietnam in our studios here in the USA, and I have a big video for you this morning. This is a regular client. And we talked about various things, but a big thing was he was really getting caught in the middle, really trying to solve, resolve, and battle the temporary inner conditions of his thoughts and feelings and the temporary outer conditions of 3D manifested reality. And we finally got to the point, you got to just drop the middle, right? You've got to settle and stand in your assumption as a fact. And this is what he said in our follow-up session. Tom, it's crazy. I just decided to drop it, the messy middle, and manifest it anyway. She called it quits with him. We got together for the first time in a month, and they promoted me to group leader. The former group manager left for another company. I absolutely love living outside the middle. I love that he put it that way. Living outside the middle. Those were his words. I love it. So what happened here? Well, he was all tangled up. He had this girl that he was dating, but he wasn't certain whether he really wanted to be with her. In the meantime, she had met someone. Well, they're no longer together. She had called it quits with him. Nothing serious was going on, but nothing serious was going on with him either. And because he wasn't serious, he didn't know yet. But anyway, she dropped it, and now they're together. They went on a few dates. Don't know where that's going to go, but it was crickets, right, for a while as she was with this other guy. Then he was in this group and he didn't get along with the group leader. She and him just didn't have any chemistry. Well, and he felt that he could do the job. Well, he did get promoted. That former group manager left the company for a bigger opportunity. So they're both thriving. And he just says, I'm absolutely loving living outside the middle. Let's talk about this, because there's a bigger story on here on what went on. So let's put it this way. What's it not about? It's not about having unwanted, or it's not about having unwanted or undesirable negative thoughts. He stopped trying to resolve that middle, judging thoughts and then trying to control it. So it's not about having unwanted or undesirable negative thoughts. It's not about not seeing or perceiving unwanted or undesirable negative 3D experiences, conditions. So it's not about those. He's allowing all of that to exist. Allowing that. It's not even judging anymore. And it's not about not feeling whatever you feel. He's not trying to run away from his feelings. If he has a thought that is unwanted, he feels it, right? Feels it through. If it's feeling whatever you feel, you always feel whatever you are thinking and assuming. That is believing, right? So it's not about controlling thoughts, right? It's not about resisting 3D conditions. And it's not about suppressing or repressing your feelings. Not about any of those things. Right? So what is it about then, is the question, just like he asked. It's about not confusing thoughts about reality with reality. They're just your thoughts about reality. They're just your temporary assumptions, invisible assumptions about reality. You can change those. It's about not confusing thoughts about who you are with who you really are. Right? It's about not confusing thoughts about who you are with who you really are. That's why Jesus asked the question, who do you say I am? Who you really are is untouched, untainted by any outer condition or any temporary inner condition of thought or feeling that you have about it. Right? You transcend all of those. It's about seeing them as changing temporary inner conditions, not judging or identifying with them as who you are. It's being greater than your thoughts. Finally got that, right? Feeling the thoughts if he has them, but knowing that he's greater than all of them, right? It's about perceiving changing temporary 3D conditions, events, as an experience of reality, not the truth of reality. All those things that you see around you are an experience of reality, but they're not reality, right? It's about not judging any condition event as final, any condition or event as final. We talked about that in previous videos, right? It's about knowing and seeing the greater reality behind all temporary conditions and events. It's about seeing all unwanted, quote, negative conditions, judged negative, as no longer your choice, not you choose, your choice, or preference. Right? It's about being greater than the events and conditions. So being greater than the thoughts, being greater than the events and conditions. This is what Dr. Joe Dispenza in his teachings, in his books, talks about quite a bit as well. Right? It's about feeling whatever you feel, holding on to nothing and then choosing again. Let the feelings be there. Let them run their course. Feel them to the end and they will end. Feel those feelings to the end and they will end, and then go to your preferred end. Go to your imagined end and stay there, right? Knowing feelings do not equal reality. It's about knowing that feelings do not equal reality. Rather, they are thoughts and assumptions and beliefs about reality that you're feeling. Do you hear it? Your feelings are not reality. They are thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs that you're about reality that you're feeling. They're filters, right? They're filters. Remember, the thoughts and assumptions are filters, and you're feeling those filters, right? They're source energy telling you that you're thinking or assuming something that's not in line with your higher purpose, with your true self, with what you really want, right? All feelings and emotions are source energy, all of them. They're pure positive love put through a filter of unwanted thoughts and assumptions, or what we call limiting thoughts, or thoughts and assumptions that just no longer serve you. Maybe they served you at one time, that's what you were thinking and assuming them, but they no longer do, right? They no longer fit your higher purpose. When you limit your source or energy in anything, you feel it as negative emotion or feelings or sensations. Hear this, this is big. When you, and we hit this, right? When you limit your source, that energy, in any way, remember, you're totally a multidimensional being, totally unlimited. You're made of that love, that energy, that source of God, God consciousness. When you try to limit it in any way, you feel it as negative sensation, or a sensation that doesn't fit or align with your higher self or what you really want, right? That's what you feel when you limit it in any way, right? Wow, that's big. So remember, on the spiritual plane, you have source, I am, all that is. Your divine desire to know and express yourself as life and love. Then you have the mental plane of thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs. Well, if you're feeling or assuming or believing I am wanting this, then you're implying I am not this. Or you're saying I am what I desire. I am that who I am. Which is it? Because that determines your whole life experience. You've got the spiritual plane where you just are, right? You are that energy, you are that love, untouched and untainted by any of this. But then you have your thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs, how you condition that love, how you condition that source energy that you are. And then you can either condition it, I am wanting this, I am desiring this, and implying that I am not this. And when you do that on the physical plane, on the manifested 3D experience of it, I am defined by these temporary 3D conditions or events, wanted or unwanted. You're defining yourself by them. You're saying, I am wanting this, I am not this. And now you're believing that that's you. I'm defined by this. Or you could say, I am what I desire to be. I am that who I am. Right? And now I am experiencing these 3D conditioned events as the temporary expression of my source. I am not the conditions. Do you see the difference? At the spiritual plane, it's only a touch, but then on the mental plane, you're conditioning them. You get declare that you are what you want to be, and you can have what you want to have. And now you're experiencing the 3D conditions events as a temporary expression of those desires and beliefs. Right? Now you're saying I am is not the conditions. You're greater than the conditions, right? The conceiver is always greater than the conception. Or you can identify yourself as those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, as the wanting, as the desiring, implying that you're not this, right? You want it, you desire it, but you're saying you're not it. Now you're defining yourself by those temporary conditions and events, wanted, unwanted. Do you see this, guys? It's very clear, right? Very clear. So remember, and I had this discussion with another client on a session, I think a couple days ago while I was in Vietnam. Being positive or positivity is not about trying to feel good despite the judged, unwanted, undesirable, negative, inner and outer temporary conditions. It's not about that. Rather, it's about being aware, increasing your awareness as I am, increasing your awareness that you're not those temporary things. That's what positivity really means. It's about a rising in consciousness. It's about becoming more aware of who you are, more aware of your thoughts, more aware of that the outer conditions are not who you are. That's what true positivity means. You are greater than the messy middle of changing conditions. This is what my client got in this situation, right? He understood that he's greater than any of these conditions, right? Being positive is about aspiring to your I am, aspiring to that higher vantage point, that higher viewpoint of who you are, raising your degree of awareness to whom you really are, to that I am. That's what being positive means. It means you're positive to all other lower viewpoints, right? This gives you directive power, higher vibration and frequency, more consciously aware over lesser degrees of self-awareness or consciousness relative to your own. Do you see that? So as you rise in your consciousness, you become more aware of it all, of that just a mess, that middle is you don't do anything with, you just become more aware of it. And direct your life by your assumptions, by what your ideals, by what you want, but aspiring to that I am. Now that's what that means by being positive or a greater positivity. That's what it means by having a higher vibration or a higher frequency. You're more consciously self-aware of who you really are. That's what we call knowing, or that intelligence that's within you. It's becoming more aware of over that. Now you have directive power, right? Operative power over those lesser degrees of self-awareness or consciousness, right? That's big. So stop trying to deal with, resolve, fix, improve, or get rid of temporary thoughts and feelings, or the middle, right? Those inner conditions, or the manifested outer conditions. Remember, they're just a reflection. Right? Stop trying to deal with all that. Move back to your imagine and desire end. Go to your end and stay there. Go to the image on the other side of the mirror. Be greater than any temporary condition. Aspire to your I am. Hold on to nothing but that which I desire to be or have. I am that who I am. That's the real story here, right? That's being greater than temporary conditions and just manifesting it anyway. I am your host, Tom Kearin. And this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of higher consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Creators, thank you. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for liking and sharing the videos. Thank you for being a part of the channel, the public channel. Thank you for joining the membership channel. We have a Facebook group, the Be Something Wonderful Ambassadors. You can find us there at facebook.com/groups/Be Something Wonderful, where you can share insight and guidance with others and ask for insight and guidance. Also, we have Instagram and Twitter. You can find us there at Tom Kearin, or just go to our website anytime at tomkearin.com or besomethingwonderful.com for all that information and more. Creators with great light, with great love and infinite gratitude. Still a little jet lagged here, guys, but I'm shaking it off. We'll see you soon on Be Something Wonderful. This is Tom. See you soon.